Alright, so today's video is going to use a term that can have extremely negative connotations and has a sobering historical reference that I am very aware of and that I respect. Now, the way I use this term in the story today is not intended to evoke that particular nightmare of human history. In other words, I'm just using it as the general noun that it is. And I don't know if I needed to say any of that, but I did. Greetings, good humans, and welcome to Tabletop Alchemy, where sometimes it's story time. And I just jabber about something autobiographical for you to listen to while you hobby. And we thank our patrons for supporting such random diversions from time to time. Alright, let's talk about the Army. As some of you know, I did a few years of service in the U.S. Army from the summer of '89 to Christmas of '91. That's in the last century, of course. So I spent the autumn of 1989 in Kentucky at Fort Knox, where I went through basic training as a 19 Delta cavalry scout. And why am I talking about this when this is supposed to be a tabletop hobby channel? I don't know. Sometimes there's just stories I have that I've wanted to tell in conversation or whatever, and I understand that once in a while, it's nice to have something that you can just put on in the background, not pay attention to visually, just, like a podcast or whatever, so you can just hobby away, do something cool at the desk or table or wherever it is that you do your hobby stuff. This is a YouTube channel. I don't know. So, all right, so a little setup regarding my basic training versus standard basic training, at least how it was, like 35 years ago. So standard basic, back then at least, was 8 weeks, and then if you had a particular MOS, that means military occupational specialty. So let's say you were going to actually be a tank mechanic. So you'd go through your 8 weeks of basic training, and then you'd get shipped off to tank mechanic school. But if your MOS was in the combat arms array of specialties, I think other than infantry, we had something called one station unit training, which is essentially 16 weeks of basic training. So instead of us getting, doing 8 weeks of basic and then getting shipped off for 8 more weeks of job training, our job was still combat oriented. So we had to learn a bunch of extra stuff. And so it just became this really long basic training session where we learned all kinds of other cool things beyond just the basic stuff. Like, I learned how to blow up bridges and use plastic explosive, and I'd be able to identify all sorts of enemy and friendly military vehicles based on their silhouettes. And, we had to do all kinds of weird stuff. Anyway, 16 weeks doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're in it, it felt kind of like forever. So while we were going through the program, we had to wear a little plastic earplug box on a little chain hanging off our top pocket. Kind of just like similar to this pocket, we had the belt loop or the little loop here, and we would hang our earplug box off that, right? So that, we'd always have our earplugs. And those were the crappiest earplugs. They were like these gigantic, weird, orange rubber spiral things that were just super uncomfortable. Anyway, so we always had to have those on us, and there were 4 stages of the training cycle, kind of like a progression system. So you could identify another soldier's progress by a piece of colored tape that we would wrap around the earplug box. There were 4 colors: red, green, black, and yellow. I don't remember the actual order of progression. I'm pretty sure I think it was red, black, green, and yellow. But, it was it was basically a milestone system, right? So it was a big deal when you got to change the color on your earplug box. I mean, it meant, mainly what it meant is you were progressing closer to getting the hell out of basic training. That's ultimately what it was, right? So you'd see other units, other units of basic trainees, those guys, they've got the yellow tape. They're getting out of here pretty soon. And, those are the new guys. They got red tape, right? That sort of thing. But also, it allowed staff, other military staff on base, would know where you were in your training regimen, right? So, for example, when we were in stage 1, we could not have any dessert items in the mess hall while we were in stage 1. So, like, no dessert with lunch or dinner. The sweetest thing we could have was chocolate milk. And believe you me, we drank us some chocolate milk every day. It's like, you'd have to go down the line and get your, whatever your thing is in the mess hall buffet line, and you get your hamburger, your, whatever they were serving, and your side dishes. I don't know what I'm saying. You get your stuff, slapped on your plate by the mess hall guys, and then, but you couldn't go to the dessert table. You couldn't pick up that chocolate cookie and that brownie. I mean, there were guys who would, try to slide a cookie into their pocket or something, and more often than not, they got caught, and it was not fun for them anyway. But we could have chocolate milk, so we would just drink a lot of chocolate milk. So after the first week that you're there, you start to get kind of acclimated to this new life that you find yourself living, and you start to regain some awareness and whatnot. And so around the second week or so, we start to hear rumors. We start to hear through the grapevine that somewhere around week 8 or 10, we're going to have to go to the gas chamber. And of course, we are all like, what the hell is the gas chamber? And why do we have to go there? And the guys who are all further along, they're like, oh, you'll see. It's the freakiest thing you're going to do here. The gas chamber. Just wait. I mean, so for weeks, this feeling of dread was slowly building up, and periodically we'd all remember, oh man, that's right, the gas chamber is coming. It's coming. It was like this, it was like I'm trying to figure out a way to describe it better, but this idea that we have this idea of something that's coming. It was like kind of like this, this anticipation of this legendary mythical thing that we were going to have to do, right? And there were varying degrees of this with other things that were part of the basic training regimen. It's like, at some point you're going to have to go out and do, the full couple of nights of actually doing, with combat training out there. You got to do the obstacle course, early on. There's like, oh, you got to do the obstacle course. It's like everyone's seen videos of the military obstacle courses, right? Just things like that. So, but this was just an eerie, kind of larger legend thing that we were pretty much afraid of. Because, I mean, it's called the gas chamber. Like, what is that? So anyway, we keep progressing, and then eventually we see, the gas chamber appears on the schedule like a week away, and we're all still like, dude, nobody wants to do this. Like, what is this thing? And we don't really know what the thing is. And then the night before, we're all just freaked out, and then the day is finally upon us. And in the morning, we have to march out for a couple of hours to get to the site, and we've all got butterflies in the stomach, and nerves are running pretty high. And then we come down the road, and we see this kind of small, kind of unremarkable brick building off the road. And there's another batch of recruits down there. They're all lined up to go in, and others are coming out, and they're like puking, and they're flapping their arms around, and there's a little bit of white smoke leaking out of the exit door. And we were just not ready. We were just like, dude, what is happening? Why do we have to go into that building? And so then the drill sergeants call a halt, and they give us the rundown. And that rundown ends with the order that when we exit the gas chamber, we absolutely must be shouting the words, "My eyes are open and my arms are flapping." And our eyes better be open and our arms better be flapping. Okay, so what is the purpose of the gas chamber? As a U.S. Army soldier, at least back then in the late 80s and early 90s, I don't know what the state is today, but back then, part of the regular kit that you walked around with was a gas mask. And it was part of our NBC gear, nuclear, biological, and chemical protective equipment. Now, the point of the gas chamber was to show us firsthand that the gas mask worked, and why the techniques we were trained in regarding how to deploy it also worked. What better way to illustrate this to a soldier than to put that soldier in a room full of gas? And the reason this exercise was so freaky and legendary was because you would go into the room, into this building, which is full of CS gas, which is a type of tear gas. You go into the room with your mask on, you see the place is full of tear gas, and then you have to take your mask off and you have to breathe the CS gas so that you know for sure that the gas mask worked. And you'd stay exposed to that CS gas for a couple of minutes, and then you'd come out of the building. And of course, when you come out of the building, you need to be saying out loud, vigorously, "My eyes are open and my arms are flapping." And the reason for that is that when we exited the chamber, all messed up from the CS gas, we were very specifically told to keep our eyes open and stick our arms all the way out and wave them like this. And we had to say that phrase over and over, "My eyes are open and my arms are flapping." And this is because apparently, this is how the drill sergeants described it to us, CS gas fills your skin pores and soft, moist tissue like eyes and nose passages, nasal passages, with tiny crystals that become even more highly irritating if you scrub them or rub them into your skin. So, none of this made us feel any better. We were not looking forward to this particular Disneyland ride by any means. Anyway, so then we had to line up and we had to get our gas mask ready. And you could see the other grunts up ahead, going into the building, and you could see other ones coming out the back, and they were coughing and sputtering and hacking and flapping their arms around. And it was just all the opposite of confidence inducing. So I'm in line, so we're in line, we're in our squads, the way that the military breaks down, like you have a troop, and then the troop is broken down into platoons, and the platoons are broken down into squads. So each squad is 7 to 10 guys. And so I'm in line with my squad. We're all single file, and we're just in this big long line, all the squads lined up. My platoon is lined up, right? And we're shuffling forward every time a squad goes in. The door opens every few minutes to let a squad of guys in, and all we can see when the door cracks open is it's dark in there. There's no lights in there. There's like this interior wall that the sun is shining on, and guys go in, turn the corner, disappear, and the door closes. It's just like literally being in a line for a Disneyland ride or something like that, right? And then my squad is next up, and we get the order: don your masks, make them clear. So we're pulling the plastic hoods over our heads, and we're holding the palms over the filters and then inhaling to create the seal. And now we're all standing there in these hoods, and we're just getting more and more nervous because we know it's coming, and everything's kind of muffled, and I sound like Darth Vader breathing inside the mask. And then the door opens up ahead, and we're ushered inside, and I'm following the guy in front of me. And I get inside, and we take a right, we go down a short hallway, and then it's a left, and we go into the main room, and it's completely dark in there, except for, there's a little bit of light coming from like a red lantern in the corner. And there's this thing that looks like a barbecue plate in this, not the center of the room, but centered in front of where we're all standing. And there's like coals on it, and a drill sergeant is in there, and he's putting these little pucks, like they look like little charcoal bricks, but they're round. And I guess they're just compressed pucks of CS gas material. That's what was issuing the smoke. So he was just dropping these things periodically, kind of like putting a coal on the heater in a sauna. And he put the puck on there, and more gas is filling up. And the whole room is full. Like, we can just see it. I mean, we're walking through fog. It's full of caustic fog. And then we're all lined up, shoulder to shoulder, facing the drill sergeant. We're just lined up like this. And he just starts telling us what we're going to have to do when we take the masks off. And, right now, we all know that the masks are working for sure, 100%, because we have them on. We could see the gas in the room, and we're fine. Like, we know the masks are working, 100%. The drill sergeant tells us that once the masks are off, we each have to tell him so the drill sergeant tells us that once the masks come off, we're going to have to hang out for like a minute. And then in order to get out of the room, we're going to each have to tell him our name, rank, and serial number, which is our social security number. And then we're going to have to stand in there for another minute, and then we'll exit. And he reiterates that whole thing about what we have to do when we exit, about my eyes are open and my arms are flapping, right? And then he says, all right, masks off. And there's like a 2-second delay, and then we all just start pulling, somebody moves first, and then we all just pull the masks off. And the first thing that happens when you get hit with the CS gas is all the mucus in your nose just dumps out. Like just all the liquid in your eyes and your nose, it just dumps out all over yourself. And your eyes, you start crying and you can't stop blinking. And it's like you put your face into like a pile of fresh cut, super powerful onions. Maybe, I mean, you're coughing and you're gagging on it, and it smells like, I don't really know how to describe the smell. For some reason, mothballs comes to mind, but that isn't really it. Maybe there's some, there's like some vague ammonia tinge to it, and there's some kind of acidic quality, but there's also like this weirdly, slightly twisted sweet undertone. I don't know. It's just unique. It's a unique smell. I've never smelled anything else that reminded me of it. But I do remember, like, even after this exercise, when we'd be out in the field doing field exercises or combat, training, sometimes they would, hit us with some CS gas, or they would throw gas grenades out in the field, and you just get a faint whiff of it and you put on your mask right quick. Like, you could just tell. You could smell it a little bit before it would really start to irritate you. You'd be like, oh, that's CS gas, man. Like, put the mask on. I don't want to deal with that. So we're all standing there in line, inside all the gas, inside this room full of gas. We're expunging our body weight in mucus and snot. And I remember working very hard to keep myself centered and not panic. And I was maintaining. I was standing up straight. I was just trying to, breathe and just be calm. And my eyes, they're running and blinking. And I will never forget that the guy next to me, just out of the blue, grabbed my forearm. I mean, he just clamped down on my arm, and I could literally feel this guy's panic. And I was like, dude, you gotta let go of me. I mean, I didn't say that to him, but I was in my head, I was immediately thinking, dude, you gotta let go of me. Because I realized at that moment that panic is contagious. And I needed that guy's hand off of me before his panic transferred to me. So I gripped my teeth and I shrugged them off, and I was just trying to, remain relatively calm. But I could tell I was riding a wave of potential panic. Like I could just feel it. It was like coming off of that guy, and I just felt it. And it was just very strange. But, I kept my shit together, and I was able to state my name, my rank, my serial number, and exit the smoke box. And then the fresh air hit me, and it hits you like a truck. Like it's bizarre. You walk, it's like all of a sudden I understood why we had to flap our arms and force our eyes open. It was like as soon as the fresh air hit you, all of your skin pores like tightened up or constricted, like in a sudden vacuum. And of course, they're all contracting around, I guess, what I imagined to be these jagged little microcrystals of CS gas, like some kind of demented snowflakes smaller than sand and made out of like glass or something. So it was like, for a few minutes, once you walked out of the building, it was actually worse. And my eyes kept wanting to squeeze shut. It's like they kept wanting to be sucked shut. And I had to literally force them open. And, through my blurry vision, I just see all these guys with super red eyes and snot running down their faces. And we're all struggling to say that mantra. My eyes are open and my arms are flapping. My eyes are open and my arms are flapping. Oh, that was a fun one. But in the end, the drill sergeants let us all rest for a little bit, because we had to wait for the rest of our squads to come through, the rest of the platoons and everything. And then it was back into formation, right face, forward march. And off we went to, probably back to the barracks or probably for lunch or something like that. So yeah, that's my basic training gas chamber story. The day I realized that panic and maybe other psychological things or conditions are potentially contagious. And I just feel like that has like very interesting implications. And having witnessed it firsthand, I just never forgot that particular idea, the realization of that. All right. I hope you got some good hobbying done while I was jabbering in the background. I've got plenty of other Army stories that'll pop up at some point, I'm sure. I mean, everybody who's been in the service at some point will have some stories about being in the service. So don't spread the panic. See ya.